Welcome everyone to F4S digital events, where we invite successful and inspiring speakers from the business world to tell their career story. By running Maths4Girls events, our aim is that it will lead more young girls into maths-oriented sectors such as finance, investment and STEM. My name is Kath and I work to connect teachers and their students with inspirational people from the world of work so that young people can get a better idea of what careers might suit them. I will be hosting today's session. Audience, your audio, video and chat function has been disabled for safeguarding purposes. If you are submitting questions, please can you click the anonymous button. And if we are unable to answer all the questions today, I do apologise in advance. We are recording the session and you will be able to watch again on YouTube and share with friends. So for just now, if you can sit back and enjoy the webinar and take some notes and get ready to ask some questions. So today I am delighted to welcome inspirational speakers Ayesa Latif and Emilia. They will talk about their career journeys and about the types of jobs that are open to you when you take maths at a higher level. So Ayesa and Emilia, thank you both for giving up your time today, and especially on such a beautiful summer's day. I'm sure everybody would rather be outside, but thanks for agreeing to share your story. So Ayesa, first of all, I'm going to ask you just to tell us a little bit about your journey from school and how you've ended up where you are today.
Sure, and thank you everyone for having me on today. So my name is Ayesa Latif, and I head the e-commerce foreign exchange sales team at Citi for Middle East and Africa. So Citi is a global bank. We have over 220,000 employees globally in over 100 cities. What we do is provide financial services to our clients. So I specifically work in markets and security services, and the product that we trade is foreign exchange. So you can think about foreign exchange as currencies. So if you think about the British pound or the US dollar or the Japanese yen, that's basically what our clients are buying or selling. The clients that we cover are institutional clients. So they will be pension funds, they will be asset managers, they'll be hedge funds, they'll be banks. And as a part of my job, I basically get to travel around to meet with our clients and talk to them about the platform that we developed and built that they can trade on. That's called Citi Velocity. We talk to them about financial technology innovation. And we also talk to them about the microstructure of the foreign exchange markets. Now, I would say to be successful at my job, you need to have both soft skills and hard skills. On the soft skills side, we are salespeople. So you really have to get to know your client, understand people, have a high level of emotional intelligence and emotional IQ, and be very good at communicating and listening. And then on the hard skills side, we are in banking, we're in finance, so you need to know your maths, you need to understand technology, and you need to understand the financial markets. Now, I know that can seem probably a little bit daunting. I can promise you that none of it is difficult to learn. A lot of what you learn is really the basics in school and in university. If you have the basics of math, the rest of it, you will learn on the job. You learn from people like me on the job. So I know it can sound very daunting that you don't know these things. You don't have to, right? I would say get the basics right, get your maths in. If you know how to add, subtract, multiply and divide, and obviously there will be some products that, are a lot more technical, but like I said, you will learn it on the job and over time. Growing up, I didn't even think I was going to do this job. Frankly, I didn't even know this job even existed, right? I didn't think I was going to work in banking. I didn't know what foreign exchange was. And, my background is my family's originally from Bangladesh. And I was born in the Philippines and my father was a diplomat. So within 2 years of living in the Philippines, we moved back to Bangladesh. And then I moved to the United States at 4 years old. And I grew up in New York for the majority of my life. And, growing up, I was really shy. I was definitely not the popular kid in school. And, I was often bullied. So, I think I gravitated towards academics And, especially math to me just made a lot of sense, a lot of logical sense. You can learn it step by step. I'm not one of those people that are naturally very good at math. It doesn't just come to me. And some people do have that talent, but that was definitely not me. For me, I definitely had to work hard at it and learn it over time and, be good at it over time. And, as I grew up, my interests kind of always, stayed within maths, but also sciences. I loved learning about the human body, and I loved to build. I would build anything. You gave me Legos, I would build entire cities of Legos. So when I went to university, I was trying to figure out what I should study. And I know it kind of had to be something that brought those three things together. So I decided to do my degree in biomedical engineering. And biomedical engineering is very difficult. It basically takes medicine and it takes engineering and brings it together. And you know what? I definitely regretted taking it my first 2 years. It was incredibly difficult. It was so tough. There were so many times I just want to give up. I just thought, I'm not clever enough. I just don't get this. But I'm so glad that I stuck to it. And, I just went at it every day, every time, if I didn't do well in school or if I didn't do well in an exam, I just stayed on it and I just kept going. I would say after 2 years of university, it's like it clicked one day. Once you keep just trying and trying at it, one day it will click. And then things actually just got a little bit easier. And that's when I really started to enjoy it. So I would say, give yourself time. Don't give up on the first, second, third, or fourth go, right? Keep at it and it will get better. So once I started enjoying it, I started thinking about what next? Like, what am I going to do with this degree and in my life? Like, I knew I needed a job because, our parents didn't have a lot of money growing up. So I definitely needed to get a job, something that will bring me some income so I can support myself and maybe help my family out. But at that time, that field was very new and there weren't really a lot of jobs. So most of the people that did my degree ended up going on to do their master's or PhD and going into research. And to me, that wasn't very exciting. I really wanted to go into industry. And so what I did is I applied to a lot of companies. And, I must have applied to over 100 different internships. And I can tell you, I got about 97 rejections, okay? I only got 3 interviews, and of the 3 interviews, I was very lucky to get 1 job offer, okay? And you know what? It can be very disheartening when you get your 50th rejection and you're like, wow, something's wrong with me. I'm just not good enough. But once again, the message is like, work at it, stay on it, you will catch a break, right? You got to believe in yourself and, persevere through. So I was very lucky to get that internship in industry, which was very rare at that time. I worked for a company called Stryker Orthopedics, and we developed bone implants. So my specialty was actually doing hip and knee replacements. And it was cool. I loved my job. It brought together everything that I always loved to do, right? I love the human body, I love to build. So we worked in a, massive complex where, the second floor was all, R&D, and, we were the engineers designing the actual bone implants. And then we would go down to the manufacturing floor and actually produce them. Right. So we had big robotic arms, you had these steel alloys, metals, and it was a proper manufacturing floor. And, that was, I thought, was my dream job at that time. Now, you're probably wondering, how I am where I am today, given that, I work in banking and in London. It's very far from working, for Stryker Orthopedics in, Mahwah, New Jersey at that time. And, I'll tell you, it's a bit of a funny story because I was one of the few people to actually get a job offer before I graduated from school. And, I would count myself very lucky at that time. So to me, I thought I was set, all my issues were gone. I did my degree, I worked hard at it, I got my job offer. And, just by circumstance, I happened to go to a career fair with some of my friends just to support them. And, I got talking to, one of the recruiters there, and I had no idea where he worked. I was just having a chat. And, at the end of the conversation, he gave me his card and he's like, you should really come in for an interview. And I was like, oh, no, thanks. I'm good. I've got a job, but my friend here needs a job. He's like, no, just come in for a chat. And, fast forward a few weeks later, I did go in, I did interview with them. I had no idea who I was interviewing for or, what bank it was really. It was so outside of my comfort zone and my field, but I did get a job offer. And, I had a hard decision to make. And, the job at that time, the job offer I got was with Goldman Sachs. And, some of you guys may know Goldman Sachs and some of you may not know Goldman Sachs. I was blissfully unaware. They were probably one of the most competitive and hardest companies to get a job in within banking. So, I guess I would consider myself very lucky. So I had a decision to make, what do I pursue what I love and what I knew, engineering and, my orthopedics job, or do I totally change my career path, at the ripe old age of 22? And you know what? I took a gamble. I took a massive gamble. I said, you know what? I'm going to just try this out. What's the worst that could happen? And I am so happy today I took that path, right? And I'm sure that engineering career and job would have been great. But, that opportunity in banking just totally changed the course of my career and my life, my personal life as well. So when I started Goldman, it was a massive learning curve. Huge, steep learning curve. I had no idea about banking. I've never taken a single economics course in my life, right? And I'll tell you what saved me. My saving grace was my maths background, my engineering background, my ability to problem solve. And those skills were so transferable. And that's what made me realize much later on, like skills like math, that's what I mean. If you get the basics right, there's just so many more jobs you can do, right? So, and it was a big part of my success at Goldman. So within a year at Goldman, I was offered a job in London. And, I moved to London almost blindly. I came here with zero family, zero friends, never actually had traveled outside of the United States at that point. So also another big, gamble for me in my life. But, I learned to embrace these things over time. And, I loved it. So, I learned a lot at Goldman. I even changed jobs within Goldman. I went into e-commerce. At that time that I changed into e-commerce FX, it was a fledgling business. So, over the last kind of decade, it was a big part of, me being involved in helping to grow that whole business within Goldman. And then 4 years ago, I left to join Citibank. And for me, like, I love Goldman. Great company to work for, but Citi was the bigger bank and the biggest bank in foreign exchange. So I was ready for that next challenge and that next step. And that's why I made that decision to leave Goldman to join Citi. And, it's been a fantastic ride since then as well, right? We just work, it's a bit different. It's not the traditional sales or trading sort of job. It's a big part of product development and fintech technology innovation. And that's a big part of what I really like about the job, right? You get the people aspect of it, where, I love interacting with other people. You get the, kind of the technology aspect of it. I really like that. And that innovation, right? Being creative. So that's a little bit about me and my story. So, I'll hand it over back to you, Kath.
Okay, so thank you very much. That was very interesting. And I think there's a couple of lessons there for students that are watching to learn. One, that you don't need to have a set goal. If whatever you do, you can change, but you really have to have the basic groundings and the transferable skills to be able to change. And I think one of the other things, there's a couple of your soft skills that we've picked up on, is perseverance. Don't give up on anything, keep at it, even if you don't like it, if you don't think you're good at it, just keep going and it'll eventually come through. But I think that maths, as you said, you've looked back and that has been key in everything that you have done, and it's enabled you to become the success that you are today. So I am now going to turn over to Emilia and just get her to tell us a little bit about her story. And, again, Emilia, if you can just maybe start about back in school, what was maths like? Did you like your teacher? What was it that made you to take maths further, and how do you use it today?
Thank you, Kath, and thank you everyone for joining. Very excited to be sharing this morning with you all. I promise we have not coordinated our outfits today, because I was looking at Ayesha and I was like, we're both wearing red. I work at Duke Center Porter Group. We're world's leader in luxury and fashion. And I'm inclusion change manager. So although my title is quite broad and it's quite confusing for some people, what I tend to do day to day is oversee projects and programs that are aimed at making positive change within the organization, but also outside, looking after our communities. And how I fell in love with math is very simple. My mother is a mathematician. In fact, I grew up in a family of scientists. So math and chemistry made total sense to me. And I was very, very lucky to have had incredible teachers at school who cultivated my passion, who really tried to bring the best out in me. And I always tried to avoid going to mom with math questions, because I knew that if I asked her one question, she would challenge me and give me 10 more. So I always tried to kind of figure things out on my own, and you know, it was like I really loved learning from the very beginning. I used to be sent to competitions and contests, gave me a lot of confidence and made me feel like I was. The other thing that I had big mentors, and they created not just my kind of like analytical skills, didn't just push me to be more analytical, they also made me challenge myself, and they tried to make me apply math in very creative ways. So by doing so, I was able to combine creativity and analytical skills, which is great, and I fell in love with other kind of like facets of math, things like logic and problem solving and patterns and cryptography. So these kind of things became really appealing beyond, you know, geometry and algebra. And then obviously, given the fact I was very, very geeky and math and STEM kind of focused, the natural way for me was to go and do a science degree. So I started my degree in chemistry, which was something that everyone expected of me to do. And then a year later, my mother was like, why don't you take a year off and do something completely different, just to see what's out there? You know, this is what you've known, this is what you've done, but there might be something else that you might enjoy. So I took a year off and I did a foundation course in fashion. And you know what? I loved it as much. And I realized that I didn't give myself enough credit, and that I was creative, and that I could do something different with my life. So I stuck with it. So I continued on and I did my whole degree in fashion, including masters. And what I realized is, although I was doing a lot of creative things, I was still using math skills, you know, with pattern cutting and knitwear that I was designing at that time. All of it was very highly mathematical. So in that sense, I had a lot of advantages because I didn't have to rely on basic patterns. I didn't have to rely on patterns that were given to me in books. I could develop my own patterns. So in that respect, I really felt like math helped me. So I continued my degree in fashion, and I graduated as a fashion designer, and I found a job as a fashion designer and joined a very, very influential Persian brand. And at some point, I felt like there was something lacking, because when you start working as a fashion designer, you realize that everything you've studied isn't quite how the world looks like. You know, you're working endless hours. It's not as glamorous as you think it is. It's a lot of hard work, which I really enjoyed. But I felt like, you know, I wasn't using the analytical side of my brain. So I continued working in fashion, and then I was invited to join an innovation program at the RCA, the Royal College of Arts. And it was around inclusive design and innovation. So which was probably a very pivotal moment in my career and my life, because I realized that I can apply my creativity and I can use my analytical skills to solve real world problems. And what inclusion and inclusive design is, it looks at the world as if there's no such thing as normal. So, you know, we're all used to tapping our Oyster cards with our right hand. We're all used to, you know, using our computers in a certain way, you know, with a certain kind of font and size. But what if, like, you know, our abilities were very different to what we know? You know, what, you know, if when you're left-handed and you go to tap your, I mean, obviously now it becomes a habit, but what if we build the world around more focused on people who were also left-handed, not just right-handed, you know? So you start to question everything around you, everything that you know, and you start seeing the world from different perspectives. So I moved into inclusive design, and at that point I didn't want to go back to fashion, and I started doing quite well. I worked with a lot of on a lot of different projects. I worked with people in wheelchairs, and I worked on people with visual impairments and a lot of different kind of ranges of abilities. And I don't genuinely remember how, but eventually I moved into business side of things. So I started consulting businesses on how to steer their strategies to make them more inclusive and more adaptable to the changing the world that we're seeing, given that we had quite a dramatic change, you know, with all the technological advances we're seeing at that time. So, and from that point onward, I moved into business, and that is where I had to really use my analytical and math skills, because, you know, it's not just about numeracy, and it's not just about number crunching. You have to be quite strategic. You have to think ahead. You have to plan. You have to analyze a lot of data to predict what the future could look like. You need to be quite agile in the way that you work, and you have to make very important decisions for a lot of people at, you know, given the fact that sometimes, like, you know, the world is changing so fast and you don't have much time to think about things. You still have to be able to look at patterns, look at numbers, look at trends, and be able to interpret them in the way that will make sense in the future. So I guess that's how I continue combining both my math skills and also my creative skills, and I continue bringing them together in my day-to-day job.
What another fabulous career journey you've had, and really amazing to hear that maths and creativity can come together, although I know accountants are very creative with their figures sometimes. So we do have a number of questions from the people that are watching, and there's a couple of them. Some of them are sort of based on gender and women in business. So do you think that being a woman has made your journey harder? Ayesa, if you want to answer that one.
I don't think it's made it harder. I think it's different, especially, you know, where I work in banking, there aren't that many women. But at the same time, I've never felt excluded. I've never felt singled out. A lot of it comes from in the beginning, especially when I was more junior, I think I was just more uncomfortable myself, right? Because you would often be in a room and you're just the only woman. Nobody else realizes that except only the woman that's in that room. So if you have that kind of self-confidence and, you know, just, it's fine. Like, it was actually fine. It didn't hurt me. I do want to change it. It's a big part of what I work on now today. So I want to encourage more people to come into finance, into banking. It's not scary. It's actually a lot of fun. And so if I look at my team today, half my team, I'm very proud to say, are women. And it's very much not the norm of how the rest of the trading floor looks like. And they're incredible women, right? They are women that have done maths, they're athletes, and, you know, they're brilliant. And I'm so incredibly proud of them. So I would say, don't let it deter you. It can be daunting at first when you look at it and go, not for me because they don't look like me, but it's actually perfectly fine. And we got to change that.
Okay, good. One for you then, Emilia. Do you think there is such a thing as the female perspective? And if so, how has that helped you in your work?
Again, I'd like to think beyond genders. I mean, I grew up in a household where, in a family where gender wasn't, a question. I grew up with two brothers. We're all treated equally. So I always saw things from their perspective. And I used to have a lot of male friends as a child. So I feel like we put a lot of labels around gender. And I think, obviously there are biological reasons why women tend to be more inclusive in decision making. And, from anthropological point of view, we are more flexible, we're more, we can compromise more, but I think that's an evolutionary point of view. I think obviously like the fact that the feedback I've had in the past is I'm able to put things into perspective, and I'm able to consider other people's points of view before taking a decision. So I think that's probably a very kind of like a female oriented trait, whereas I might be wrong, but I genuinely think that, I also think like we as women have a lot of limiting beliefs. We tend to criticize ourselves a little bit more than most men. And, I think it's also down to changing those narratives inside our heads and seeing beyond our own gender. Like, for example, I never saw myself as a girl who couldn't do things. No, I was a human being. I was as capable as anyone else. And if I put my mind to something, I was going to achieve it. So it was not down to my gender. And equally, I think there are a lot of brilliant traits that guys have, and then there are amazing traits that women have. And I think we should, instead of, looking for differences, we should actually cultivate the unity of two. And just because you're a guy doesn't mean you can't be emotional. Just because you're a girl doesn't mean that you have to be too emotional. So yeah, I think I would probably challenge the constructs that we have inside our heads.
Good. And I think, both sexes have different qualities, and I think what we should be doing is finding ways to make them complement each other and work together. Basically. So another question then, did you have a mentor, either of you, that has helped you through your career, you, Ayesa?
So I can take this one. I've had formal mentors and I've had informal mentors. My formal mentors never really worked because it was always a bit strange. You get assigned somebody, and I think a mentor is somebody you have to gel with really well. You both have to kind of get along from a personal perspective. And I wouldn't actually call them mentors. I would call them sponsors, right? I don't really want mentors. I want sponsors, right? Sponsors are people who are going to give me that advice, but also help me get there, right? They're also going to do some of the heavy lifting. Like if I'm going to put in the effort, they're going to put in the effort as well. So I've definitely had a lot of sponsors. A lot of them have been my managers, and some of them have been, outside of my departments as well. And, they're very good at giving you perspective. When you've had that bad day and you just need to, tell somebody, right? They're very good for that, right? To let off some steam, and then they'll give you that perspective, right? Like how best to handle that situation, right? Sometimes that immediate knee-jerk reaction is probably not the right way to handle it. Sometimes it's better just to walk away, have a think about it, and see how you can move forward together, try to understand that other person's perspective. So I think a lot of my mentors and sponsors have been very good at giving me that perspective on life.
Good. Okay, time for one last question, and I'll give it to you, Emilia. What advice would you give a young person who has no idea what to do in life?
I'd say try as many things as you want. There's no such thing as wrong decision. Life will always take you where you need to be. I think just trust in yourself. There was one thing that I heard when I was younger, and it stuck with me. A little bird that sits on the branch isn't afraid of the branch snapping or, failing it, because it believes in its own wings. So I think, you know, confidence is the key. You have to believe in yourself. And I think you don't need to have all the answers figured out now. You know, life is a journey. We all change. And I think especially at this time, it's really important to keep learning, to keep developing, and, you know, being honest with yourself. Just because someone else is, you know, is doing social media and is becoming an Instagram influencer, doesn't mean that you have to. You know, science is cool, science is fun. Equally, creative fields are also quite fun as well. It doesn't have to be, you know, a permanent thing. You can change, evolve, and just be in control of your own life.
Okay, thank you. And thank you both for sharing your stories with us today. And I am sure you will have convinced some of the people watching that maths is useful. So I also want to thank all the students at home for joining us today, especially on such a beautiful sunny day. But hopefully you've learned something, and thank you for all the great questions you asked. You will be emailed a feedback survey, so we would really ask if you could complete this, because we want to be able to continue to improve our digital services. And look out for the recording on YouTube channel. And if you aren't following us, we are on Twitter and Instagram. So we have career webinars most days, and there is another event on Monday at 2 p.m, which concentrates on engineering, and we hope to see you there. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us today.
Thanks,
Thank
Kath.
you.
Bye.
Thanks, Kath.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.